Hi, I'm Siri Lindley. I'm a former triathlon world champion and now a coach of numerous champion athletes. And I am here today on Physical Performance with Brad Beer, and I'm so excited to chat with you today.
Failure is not an option.
I've had my ups and my downs.
I think it's an absolutely breakthrough experience.
Welcome to the Physical Performance Show, the show designed to inspire the pursuit of your physical best performance. I'm your host, Brad Beer. Listen in as we delve into how the world's top physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs, the lows, and the journey of getting there. Let's get ready, set, let's go. Listeners, welcome to another episode of the Physical Performance Show, the show that takes you behind the scenes of how the world's top and most inspiring physical performers achieve their success, as well as the highs and the lows of the journey in getting there. Today's show, as always, is lovingly brought to you by POGO Physio. We exist to help you perform at your physical best, and we do this through our industry-first, fixed-fee, unlimited access, 2, 6 and 12-week finish line programs. In simple, we want everyone who walks through the doors of POGO to get a high five moment where they've finished their rehabilitation. They're back to their physical best. And we ensure this occurs through our fixed fee and unlimited access model, Australia's first. Finally, you can get the treatment that you actually need as opposed to the treatment that you can afford under the traditional session-to-session approach. Our programs include active rehabilitation, clinical Pilates, Galileo whole body vibration therapy, Alter-G anti-gravity treadmill running, and of course, hands-on treatments such as remedial massage, physiotherapy, and podiatry. Work towards a set end date for your physiotherapy rehabilitation with unlimited access to hands-on treatment and this state-of-the-art active rehabilitation. It's all backed by our finish line guarantee. To find out more about POGO Physio's finish line programs, jump over to pogophysio.com.au and you'll find all the information there, including our upcoming launch of the POGO Partners program as we take and make finish line programs available throughout Australia. I hope you enjoyed last week's episode, listeners, featuring triathlete sensation Mr. Brent McMahon, 2 times Olympian and 4 times sub-8 hour Ironman triathlete. Just incredible in terms of what Brent's achieved in his career. And I hope you took some real key learnings from Brent's struggles and also his victories. He's a really calculated athlete, Brent, and a very intelligent one. And I hope you took that from the episode with Brent, shared last week, episode 66. If you did, please let Brent and I know. Tag us in on a comment on social media. That would mean the world to Brent and also to myself. Then a massive thank you to you, the listener. If this is your first time joining us on the Physical Performance Show, welcome. If it's your 67th time, thank you for returning. And a massive thanks this week to Jimmy Cax. Jimmy rated the podcast 5 stars, and Jimmy's comments were best podcast I've subscribed to. The list of elite athletes and amazing people living their dreams and achieving goals is amazing. Very inspiring podcast, and I count down to the next one each week. Keep doing what you're doing, Brad. It's top notch. Jimmy, thank you so much for taking the time to leave a review. That means the world. And listeners, if you're like Jimmy and you've been enjoying it, if you're happy to jump over to iTunes, that'd be wonderful, and drop a review. It's as simple as leaving one through your desktop. You can't do it through your mobile or your tablet. So thanks again, Jimmy. Listeners, you're in for a real treat for today's episode of the Physical Performance Show. I recently caught up with Siri Lindley. Siri is an incredible athlete and an amazing coach. She is widely known and widely loved inside the world of triathlon. And if you're not into the sport of triathlon, but you're into performance, pursuing peak physical performance. You're going to get a lot out of this episode with Siri. Siri's bio as an athlete is quite incredible. She was the 2001 ITU World Champion. She won 13 World Cup races between 2000 and 2002 on the World Triathlon Union rankings and series. Siri won the World Cup series in 2001 and 2002 and was the number one ranked triathlete in the world. Siri began coaching not long after this in 2003, and Siri's coaching credentials are incredible. Not only has Siri coached athletes to 4 Hawaiian Ironman victories, being Miranda Carfrae 3 times and also Leander Cave, but Siri also coached Susan Williams to the US's first ever Olympic triathlon medal, taking bronze in the 2004 Athens Olympic Games. Siri's coached scores of athletes win 70.3 world titles and scores of age group athletes winning all sorts of titles, including many world championships and also national championships. Not only is Siri an incredible coach, an amazing athlete, Siri's also recently become an author with the release of her book Surfacing. In this episode, I jump in with Siri and we talk philosophically about coaching, what it is that it takes to generate great results as a coach with athletes. We talk obviously about Siri's triathlon career. We share some great stories. There was so much to cover with Siri. We didn't jump into a performance round. However, as Siri outlines, we're likely to be catching up again at some point in the future. So you're going to really enjoy this episode with Siri Lindley. Let's jump right in. Listeners, I have been looking forward to connecting with today's guest, Siri Lindley, for many months, and it's going to be a real treat for us today, listeners, to get inside the minds of one of the world's most preeminent coaches in the sport of triathlon, in sport in general, and also the mind of a previously very successful world champion athlete. So, Siri Lindley, great to have you online today.
Well, thank you for having me, Brad. I've been looking forward to this as well. I'm only sorry that we couldn't make it happen sooner.
Well, as I said off air, good things are worth waiting for, Siri, so no pressure. And I want to start with something that's a little bit curly and thought-provoking out of the gate, and that's, what's one thing that scares Siri Lindley?
Oh my gosh. Well, first of all, I'll start by saying that there was a time in my life, right actually before I took up triathlon, where I decided that I was going to do something every day that scared me. And that was my way of becoming more comfortable with stepping out of my comfort zone and doing things that scared me and that I knew would help me to grow as a human being. And so I love that you've asked me that question. It's my favorite thing in the world to think about the things that scare me, because it makes me want to take them on even more. But when you get into my deep heart, to be really truthful and honest, I feel that it is such a privilege and an opportunity to take on somebody's dreams, whether it's an athlete that I'm working with or a person that I'm working with just, coaching in their own lives. But when someone comes to me and says, this is my dream and I would like you to help me make this dream come true, I find that is just such an honor and such a privilege. And throughout my entire coaching career and just in my life in general, when I feel that someone is counting on me to help them find the very best inside of themselves and to help steer them in the direction where they're going to be able to tap into all their greatest potential and make these things happen. I guess my greatest fear is not being able to follow through. And yes, that's a fear that scares the crap out of me, but I think that it's a very important fear to have in my hip pocket every day, because it really it makes me think every day, am I doing everything in my power to bring out the best in this person? Am I bringing everything I have to the table? Am I growing as they're growing? And all those things. So I think sometimes when you have a great fear, as long as it's a fear that is kind of an empowering fear, that it actually can be quite helpful in you performing to the best of your ability. So that would be my greatest fear. And then if I really digress, my biggest fears are just losing the people I love the most in my life. And what I realize there is that that's a very disempowering fear, that I really have no control over anything like that. So I choose to focus on the fear that actually pushes me to be the best that I can be.
Well, Siri, I mean, and this program is all about that, helping people to, pursue their best, to perform at their physical best. And I think it's it's such a common theme through guests on the program, that fear of not discovering what the true potential was, whether it's them themselves as athletes, or in this case, you as an athlete and now as a coach who's stewarding the success and the gifts of the people in your coaching realm. So, Siri, that's beautiful. You mentioned there, your loved ones, and I think it's a good time to throw into your mother. Siri, whenever I see a photo of your mother on social media, she looks like she might have drunken from the eternal well of good health. She looks incredibly fresh and fit, and so the incredible genes, right?
Yeah, and I'm very lucky, and I tell you what, like, she's just a freak of nature, really. And I'll share a short little story with you, because I worry so much about losing the people I love, and it's just ridiculous because I'm surrounded by these incredible human beings that are so strong. And my mom's about 73, I would say, and last year she wanted to she made it sound like this might be the last time. So, Siri, please come. I want to climb my favorite, 14,000-foot mountain, and this may be the last time that we can do it. And so I'm thinking, oh, my God, well, I'm going to have to say yes, because I don't want her to go alone, because God forbid something happens to her. So I'm like freaking out, and I'm telling Beck, I'm saying, I can't believe this. What if something happens on the top of the mountain? What am I going to do? So long story short, we go on this hike of this 14,000-foot mountain, and we're about like 11,000 feet up, and she is absolutely kicking my ass. I am like dragging ass, wanting to stop, wanting to eat my sandwich, and she's like forging forward, and I'm just like, oh my God, I'm so ridiculous for worrying over the last 2 weeks about what was going to happen to you, and I should have been worrying about how badly you were going to kick my ass. So it just shows that a lot of times, we worry about things that we really shouldn't, and it's a waste of energy. And that was just a pretty adorable story that reminded me that my mom truly is so strong that I really don't need to worry about her, because she can kick my ass. So there's the story there.
That's brilliant. Isn't that great? So a good principle to take out of it too, Siri. Siri, in your professional life, you've straddled two lives, as I've mentioned there, and we've just touched on the coaching side and your own athletic success. Just on your own athletic success, firstly, your accomplishments were, as I mentioned at the top of the show, they're long, they're extensive. There's world championships, there's multiple World Series victories. Out of all those successes, Siri, is there one race, one result in particular that stands above the others in your mind and heart as, maybe your greatest accomplishment in your own athletic success? Yeah,
definitely. And I don't want to minimize the excitement and the exhilaration of winning a world championship, because that truly was a life-changing moment for me in 2001. But there was a race before that, that was the Toronto World Cup in 2001. And I will remember that as my greatest moment ever in my sporting career, because I had learned how to swim when I was 23, and it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life, because I really didn't know how to swim, but I wanted to become great in this sport that I'd fallen in love with. And I just, went from swimming with my head out of the water, looking like a human washing machine, to, learning how to put my head under the water. And eventually I started racing and got to the point where I was good enough to turn pro, but I was coming out, minutes and minutes behind the front packs. But I can honestly say I dedicated every ounce of my heart and soul towards becoming the best swimmer I could possibly be, with the aim of being able to come out in the front pack in a World Cup race, because I knew in order to win a World Cup, I needed to be in the game, at least close to the front of the race coming out of the water. So in Toronto, we were lucky enough that the water was about 13 degrees, I think it was. Is that really cold? Or 10 degrees maybe? Does that sound like really freakish
both
cold?
Sound incredibly cold to me, Siri.
Okay. Because I'm usually in Fahrenheit. All I know is it was between 10 and 13 or something like that. And everybody was freaking out. And I had a way as an athlete, where I chose not to think about how bad something was going to be. And I thought, let's just do it. So on that day, we dove in and I stuck my head under the water, and I decided I'm just not going to keep lifting it out of the water. I'm going to keep it under the water so it goes numb quicker, and I'm just going to swim my ass off to try and stay in that front pack. And that was the first race in my entire career where I literally came out on the feet of Loretta Harrop and Sheila Taormina and Barb Lindquist and Sharon Donnelly and all these, top swimmers, some of whom had been like former Olympic swimmers. And in that moment, and I should add that leading into this, I was doing like months at a time, like 1 month of swimming 70 to 100,000. Wait, is that right? 70,000 to 100,000 K a week. And my whole life was swimming. And it was just like the hardest thing I had ever done in my life. And I didn't know if it was going to pay off. I didn't know if I would ever make it. I was trying to make up for 23 years of missed time in the pool. And so on that day, when I came out on the heels of the top swimmers in the sport, like I could have retired right then and there. Like truly, I would have felt satisfied, because that was like, in my mind, it seemed like something that was absolutely impossible, but I achieved it on that day. Thank God I didn't stop. I kept racing, and that was, I ended up, it was unbelievable, because to be at the front of the race from the very start, I didn't really know what to do with myself, because usually I was, just destroying myself to try and catch the third pack and then the second pack and then ultimately the front pack. But I was there from the beginning, and it was just one of those wins that, having set myself up on the swim for the first time ever was just the most amazing feeling in the world. And so I would say that was my greatest race of my career for that reason, because it was the swim that literally made me think this dream that I have is impossible, because I don't have this. And on that day, I was able to prove to myself that I did and I could. And that was very powerful, and ultimately led to me 2 weeks later being able to win the world championship. Even though I had a crappy swim, I had developed a confidence that made me feel like, okay, I can achieve things that I don't think are possible. So who knows, maybe I can be the one that can win today.
Siri, I mean, and, as you said, you started swimming with your head bobbing out of the water. 23 years to catch up at an elite level in a sport is unprecedented. Where did that drive come from to cram those kilometres or miles in the pool? And I've heard in a recent interview there, or a previous interview you've done with the legendary Tony Robbins, you share around why Brett Sutton, one of your former coaches, took you on, and he spoke about the drive that he saw in you to run from 41st to up to first or whatever it may be. So where did that drive as an athlete or as a person come from for you?
It came from a really deep place, and I don't know, Brad, if you had asked me way back then, where the drive came from, I probably would have had, I probably wouldn't have known how to answer it. But now when I look back, I know exactly where it was coming from, and it was coming from a place where up until that time, at the age of 23, I was a very fearful human being. I lived in a state of anxiety every single second of every day. And I was able to function, and I was able to, be successful in school, and I got into a good college, and I was a good athlete. But my experience of life on the inside was really chaotic and kind of traumatic. I was just not happy in my own skin. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what I was made of. I don't know if, I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that can kind of relate to that feeling of, almost wanting to run away from yourself, but you can't, because you are you and you can't get out. And I had, throughout college, I was a ice hockey, field hockey, and lacrosse player, and I had always had a great athletic drive, and it was great to be a part of a team, because when you win, it was because of everyone, and when you lose, it couldn't be all because of you. It was, a team effort. So it was a safe place to be. And when I discovered triathlon, I really looked upon it as, wow, this is a challenge where it's going to be all up to me, whether I win or lose or go slow or go fast or give up or keep going. It's going to be because of me and what I decide. And I had gotten so sick and tired of being inside this body where I didn't know who I was or what I was made of, whether I was strong, whether I could be resilient, whether, I had no idea who I was. And I think in that moment, there was something about this sport that was opened my eyes to the fact that this could be the perfect vehicle for me to discover who I am and to find out what I'm made of and to discover me. And it was a necessary step because, I was someone also who had so many dreams, and I had this incredible imagination of what my life was going to look like and the things I was going to accomplish and the love I was going to have and all these amazing things. And I think I just woke up one day and said, screw that. Like, I'm never going to have that if I live in this place of fear the rest of my life. And if I live here stifled by my anxiety, the only way I'm going to achieve all these things that right now are only a part of my imagination is if I step out of my comfort zone and find out who the hell I am and learn to love myself and appreciate myself. And I thought, I'm sure that there are strengths inside of me that I don't know of. So every time in triathlon, and when you speak about Brett, I believe it was a race in Noosa where I was in like 42nd place, and he was still out on the course, and I was just destroying myself because 41st place was right in front of me, and we were like 200 meters to the finish line, and I was killing myself because any victory was a confidence builder for me. Anytime I overcame something and didn't give up on me and didn't reject myself but backed myself, it was a moment towards my own freedom. And that is what drove me. And with every small success and every improvement in the sport and every second I dropped on 100 meters in the pool was validation for myself. And I know, a lot of us, I spent the whole first part of my life getting my validation from everyone around me and being a pleaser and, helping people so that I knew that I mattered. But for me, the person whose love I craved the most was my own. And that's what I was after. And I was only going to get that if I kept proving over and over again that I was worth something and I was strong and I was capable and I could achieve something that I thought was special. Sorry, that was a really long answer.
It was a long answer, but one absolutely worth listening to, Siri. So there's a lot in there. It's absolutely great. I think you touched on some interesting things there, and we definitely want to go here, that notion of, I know so many athletes get their validation through their performances, and that very much can define them and become their identity, which is terrific while the athletic success flows, but the moment the tide starts to turn, it can become a real challenge for athletes. And it's not only in the athletics world, Siri, it's in any aspect of life. I think, as you say, most of us grow up through our formative years and beyond, trying to validate our worth through our achievements and our performances, whatever the endeavour is. So, just reversing there, anxiety was a word that you used, and I actually think, Siri, looking at, many endurance athletes, the world that you know so well, the world that I've really grown up through, and I actually think that anxiety is a major attribute of many endurance athletes, and part of, if you like, their self-medication is, the serotonin and dopamine hit they get from a hard training session that calms down that anxiety. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And just having control over, if we can control when we're anxious about something bad happening or whatever, the more we can control how we train, what we eat, when we do it, when we show up, who's going to be there, it gives you that sense of certainty and security, which is great. It's absolutely anxiety and fear of failure and all of that is probably a great motivator for every endurance athlete. But I think to find the balance of your love for the sport and doing it not because you need to take control of your life and have a schedule and have a structure, but to also remember, okay, I'm doing this because I love it and it makes me happy and I make great friends and it's a great environment. It's inspiring to remember those aspects to keep that emotional balance, I would say, is really important.
Yeah, great. And just Siri, before we move off this line of thinking, I'm not sure if I missed it there, but what really drove that anxiety for you in your younger years? What was at the heart of that?
I think if we all dig really deep, and I don't want to get too, although maybe you want me to, but there's always something that happens in our younger years that sets up kind of our beliefs about the world and about the people around us. And I had a very kind of traumatic event when I was 4, which I won't go into here, but in that moment, I think I was so scared and so terrified of losing the people that I loved, or I think people have 2 main fears, and it's universal, and we all feel them. And one is the fear of not being enough, which leads to the fear of not being loved. If we're not enough, we're not going to be loved. And it's probably a universal fear because all of us will have some kind of an experience early on in our lifetimes where we are faced with that possibility. And mine, I've done enough work where I know exactly where that came from. But so the anxiety was me, feeling that it was up to me to save everyone around me. It was up to me to keep everybody happy, and that basically, the weight of the world I felt from a very young age was on my shoulders. And it just created a lot of anxiety because I didn't feel quite ready to take on, such a huge task. I didn't feel prepared. I didn't feel like I qualified to take all of that on, but I took it on, not because anybody put it on me. And I think that's a mistake a lot of us make, is we choose to take it on even though nobody's asked us to, but that becomes kind of that suitcase that we carry throughout our life. And until we realize that responsibility really isn't ours, it's hard to shake that anxiety. But I would say that most people that struggle with anxiety, it's normally based from those 2 main universal fears of not being enough, and which leads to the ultimate fear of not being loved or cared about or appreciated or respected. And I think everybody out there listening could probably agree that if they think about it, those 2 things are not great to think about. And when I say, my greatest fear is not being able to follow through with making an athlete's dream come true or helping someone when they need my help, that probably goes down to a deeper level to not being enough to get the job done. And then I'll fail, and then they won't respect me, or, all those deeper fears underlie all our greatest fears that we will throw out when you ask that question, Yeah,
absolutely. And it can either immobilize people or it can mobilize them to onto, great success as you've experienced. Siri, I think I'd encourage listeners to hear about your first triathlon. I mean, you went on to cram your swim training to catch up on 23 lost years, and have, world title and multiple success there. What was your first triathlon like?
Oh my God. And I please let me preface this whole story by saying that this is the absolute truth. I am not exaggerating. This is exactly how it went, because I really need people out there to understand that you can be as bad as I was. And you probably think, oh, you couldn't be as bad as I am. Well, trust me, I was. And you can go on to really become very proficient, and even ultimately, if you dream of it, winning a world championship. But my first race, I had been living in Massachusetts, and I decided that I wanted to go do a race where no one would know me. Not that many people knew who I was anyway. I didn't even have that many friends, but I thought, okay, I'm going to fly out to Colorado and visit my mom and do a race out there. And so I came out to Colorado and I rented a bike, and the bike shop only had big, heavy mountain bikes. So I thought, oh, cool, that's fine, no problem. And I remember, I had just been reading in magazines about carbo loading. So I was like really excited that I had a total grip on what I needed to do the night before this sprint race. It was a sprint race. It was a 750 meter swim, a 20K bike, and a 5K run. And so the night before, I'm at the store with my mom, and I said, okay, Mom, I need a box of pasta, and I need a loaf of bread, and we need cookies for dessert, and we need lots of water. And she's like, really? Do you really want to eat this much? And I'm like, yeah, I've read about, carbo loading. You got to carbo load. So I literally stuffed my face until I was I could not put anything more down. And then I gave it an hour. I had a cookie for dessert. I thought, okay, I'm ready to go. And the next morning I show up, and the swim is in a pool. And there were two problems. The first problem was you go up to a desk to register, and the woman was like, okay, what swim time do you swim for 100? And there are probably a lot of you listening right now that wouldn't know how to answer that either. And I'm like, I don't understand. What do you mean? She said, well, what do you swim 100 in? And I'm sitting there, I'm just flabbergasted. I don't even know how to answer it. And there's people, lining up behind me, and they're all getting really aggravated because I'm taking so much time, and they want to just get ready and warm up. And I'm like, I just don't know. I don't know. And she said, is it 115, 120, 125, 130, 135? And I'm like, I don't know, mate. 120. I'm in the 120. That's fine. 120. So they put me in the 120. I have no idea what that means. So I kind of just forget about it because I'm just so excited for my first race. And it's time to get in my bathing suit that I had just bought, the week before. And so here's my second problem, is that I had carbo loaded so heavily the night before that I could not get into this suit. I am literally it's breaking off the circulation in my arms, and I'm so uncomfortable, and the seams are starting to split. So didn't worry again because I'm all excited. I'm like, okay, it's a little tight. That's going to help me go faster. So I get to the start, and I remember one of my friends saying, don't freak out when you see really fit-looking people. Probably the really muscular, no body fat ones are usually the slowest. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Because in my lane, there were all these guys that were ripped with massive triangular backs and shoulders, and I was so excited. And I've had this thing, it's I don't know if it's geeky or nerdy or just oblivious, but in any race I've ever done, I just go straight to the front because I just want to see where I'm going, and I'm just oblivious. So I get to the front. There's all these triangular, Greek gods behind me, and the gun goes off, and I dive in, and literally the first, I don't know how many minutes, I was just getting absolutely pummeled. I was being elbowed and kicked, and people were yelling at me, and I was just trying to get down to the other side of the pool, and I was it was whoa, this is, in the moment, I'm thinking, oh my God, this is so awesome. Everybody's just so into it, but they were really just so pissed off with me, and I'm totally in the way. But, the best part about it is that I was 100 in, and they were all out. So I had the whole lane to myself for, the rest of my swim, which was awesome. And I got out on the bike, and, I got out of the pool. I have to tell this part because it's at a pool, so I don't know how I can't find my transition area, but my mom is there yelling and screaming, Siri, over here. And I had chosen spandex pants, the kind that go just below the knee, and because I thought it would look cool. So she's there, and she's got them, waving them in the air and yelling for me to come. And then there's a referee saying, stop, there's no outside assistance. And my mom's like, but she's my daughter. And so I'm running, and then, I'm putting on one leg of the pants, and I fall over, and my mom's like freaking out, and the ref is yelling at her. So my mom starts to cry, and I take off the bike, and I've got one spandex leg, like literally all the way down to my ankle, even though they go down to the knee. And the other one's like all the way up my groin. And I take off, and my helmet's like crooked. And I take off on the bike, and it was like the hardest course. It was like I was just grinding and trying to get up these hills, but just loving it. But this bike was heavy, and I actually, as an aside, I went back like a couple years ago because I was like, I want to go back and see where that first race was and check out, like, just reminisce. And I get back, it was like dead flat, not a single hill on the course. But I remember it as being like this mountainous, like, in the Alps, but it was dead flat. Get out on the run, and all I knew about running was like sprinting up and down a field. I'd been in team sports, so I thought, okay, well, this is how I tackle it. So I was just like 100 meters, like as hard as I could go until I like literally almost dropped, and I was like gagging and hyperventilating and snotting out my nose, and then I'd catch my breath, and then I'd do it again, and I literally ran the whole entire 5K with like these 100-meter sprints, because we're at altitude too, which I failed to think about. And anyways, I'm having the time of my life, and I'm like dead last, like absolutely dead last. And everybody, I do remember a ton of faces and tons of people like saying, talking things and yelling things, but I was just in the moment and loving it. Cross the line, my mom's there. She's got the whole car packed up, and she's like, okay, well, let's go have some lunch. And I was like, Mom, like the awards are at 1:00. Like we can't leave now. And she looked at me like, oh my God, my daughter is just crazy. Like she's last place. Like everybody's, and so she's just like, wanted to support me. And she's like, okay. And of course we waited around, and I didn't get anything because I was like dead last. But anyway, so it was that night that we get back to her house, and it's time to go to bed. And I go into my bedroom, and as we all know, when you get in bed at night, it's kind of like the most vulnerable you ever are. Like you lie there, and suddenly like the reality of everything hits, and everything becomes really raw. And in that moment, I was just bombarded with everything that had been happening outside of my own body during the race. And I kept seeing like these, like the look on the ref's face and the look on the people's faces on the bike that were like flying by me, and thinking, what the hell is this girl doing on the course? She's not even moving. And then the people on the run watching me like bent over, hyperventilating, almost gagging, and thinking, oh, that poor girl, what an embarrassment. I've got one spandex down one leg and up the other, and they're all like, this poor girl, what an embarrassment. And then young kids like laughing at me, and it all hit me. Like suddenly, it was like I suddenly was watching back the video of what everyone around me was seeing during that entire race. And I started bawling. I was just absolutely devastated. And I ran into my mom's room. I've got tears just flooding down my face. And she looks at me and says, Siri, it's okay. I'm just so proud of you that you did it. And now you can go and do all those things that you're so good at. And I was like, no, you don't get it. Mom, I want this more than I've ever wanted anything in my entire life. I want to be the best in the world in this sport. And I couldn't even believe that was coming out of my mouth, because I don't talk like that. I didn't have any confidence, but it was like it came out of my mouth. And she looked at me. I'll never forget the look on her face. It was like shock, but it was also like, God, I love my daughter for where is this even coming from? But I have to support her. She said, I will support you for 2 years, emotionally, and I'll help you get to some races. But if you haven't, made any progress forward by that point, promise me you'll get another job. And I promised her that. But it was one of those moments where I think in saying that and saying something that was like so out of character for me, it really set out the intention. And it was kind of like a dare to myself. And it really led to me deciding that nothing was going to stop me from making that happen. I didn't care how many times I fell, how many times I embarrassed myself, that I was going to find a way to make this happen. And so it was a really powerful moment. But of course, it was brought on by an intense feeling of embarrassment and humiliation, and wanting something so bad, but realizing how terrible I am at it, and realizing that, nobody in the world would ever think that I could make this happen, but that for the first time in my life, I'm going to back myself and say, we can do this. Let's start now.
Yeah, wow. And what was the year? Because obviously you won your world title in 2001. I'd love to know what the first thing your mum said to you when you crossed the line, announced world champion was. But before that, what year was this, Siri? I mean, how many years?
That was 1993. So it was 8 years to winning a world championship, which blows my own mind, because I don't think I would even call that out for any of my young athletes. But in the same note, I look back and I think, hey, if you've got that mindset and you've got that absolute intense hunger inside of you, anything is possible. And I'm living proof of that. And I'm not just living proof of that for somebody that's already good and a great athlete and, a great swimmer, but living proof for someone like any one of you who's listening to this, that has some kind of a massive dream that seems so impossible that literally everyone around you would laugh at you if they heard you say you wanted this. I totally believe with all my heart that if you want it bad enough and you're willing to do everything in your power to make this happen, and that means failing and falling and getting back up again and changing course and never giving up and being resilient and relentless, if you're willing to do that, then anything is possible.
And so what did your mum say, Siri, as you crossed the line that day to take the world championship?
She just cried. She just fled. There were no words. And I didn't even have, I mean, I remember feeling like I had never in my life felt so blessed or so grateful in my life. And it was because it wasn't the, amazingness of winning a world championship, but it was for the first time in my life, I felt proud of me. And that was something I think I'd been, wanting my whole life.
Yeah.
I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but it's just the absolute truth. To feel happy in my own body for the first time was a pretty incredible gift that I gave myself that day. Mind you, and to put listeners in perspective, I mean, this was off the back of your own athletic endeavours, what you describe as, the overcoming the disappointment of missing the first Olympic Games in Sydney in 2000. This was 2001, you won the world title. So you must have been able to channel that disappointment for you personally of missing 2000 to then go on to win the world title just a year later, right? Oh, totally. And it was actually a complete reset. I was pretty much ready to retire after not making the Olympics because I was looking at it in all the wrong ways. It was like the be-all, end-all for me was winning, qualifying for the Olympics. And I thought if I didn't qualify, I was worth nothing. I was nothing. And it was this horrible, setup for failure that I, put myself into. And so I didn't know where to go from that because it was everything that I'd been working for. And I remember I called Brett and I said, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And he said, you get on the plane tomorrow and get out here to Switzerland, and we're getting back on the horse and you're going to go race duathlon world championships. And I thought to myself, I can't think of anything worse. Like I want to go crawl in a hole and just cry. And he said, well, get your ass on the plane and we'll talk about it when you get here. And something put me on that plane. And I went to Switzerland, and it was me and this French guy, Cedric, and we had to train like in the snow and the freezing cold. And what Brett said to me is, actually, I'm getting the whole timeline messed up. I'm so sorry, Brad. That was after the Olympics. I hadn't made the Olympics, and that's when Brett took me on. I apologize, everyone, but this is going to make sense in a minute. So I didn't make the Olympics. Loretta Harrop, this is a story in itself, invited me to come train with Brett, and Brett agreed to it. And when I got there, he said to me, what has this been all about for you? And I said, just, making the team, making the Olympics, winning a medal. It's everything I've ever wanted in my life. And I have to do this, that, and the other in order to feel like I've succeeded. And he said, well, that can't be how it started. Like, how did this start? And I said, I just fell in love with the sport. It just exhilarated me. I was just couldn't believe like how many different shapes and sizes and ages and people of all different, from different countries were all doing it. And they all seemed just as excited and inspired and motivated, but it was in their own unique and individual way. And he said, well, go back to that. You are now formally, from the day that I start coaching you, you are retired and you are now coming back to just enjoy the sport that you love and to see, how fast, how strong, how fit you can get doing what you love the most. And that's this sport that, intrigues you. So he changed my mindset, and that was kind of the reset after not making the Olympics. But I remember 3 weeks before the Olympic Games in Sydney, I had gone to the Lausanne World Cup and had a race where I won by 2 minutes, and I won over Bridget McMahon was second, and McKeely Jones was third, and Magali Mesmer was fourth. And I won by 2 minutes. And I went and watched the Olympics, and I was just praying that, there was a girl on our team that was injured, and I thought for sure they're going to put me in. I'm ranked number 2 in the world right now, or whatever I was. And they didn't put me in. So I watched the Olympics happen. And the finishers were Bridget McMahon first, McKeely Jones second, and Magali Mesmer third, all of whom, 2 or 3 weeks ago I'd beaten by 2 minutes. So I was just devastated. Like, I just felt like it was this cruel, I don't know. I went into a deep depression over this. And I know it doesn't make sense because I just got over telling you that I had this major reset in my intentions for the sport. And probably the worst thing I did was go to Sydney and watch the Olympics, because it kind of brought me back to that place again. And that's when I called Brett and said, I'm not coming back. I'm done. There's no point. And he got me back on the plane, and we trained in the freezing cold, and I went and did Duathlon Worlds, and we had a sprint photo finish for the gold, and I got the silver. Steph Forrester won, but that put me on track and reminded me that, he's a tough guy. He's an amazing, what makes him so brilliant is he's very honest and he's very straightforward. And when he sees what is really hurting you, he will point that out to you. And he said, this sport and making the Olympics is not what makes you who you are. There's so much more to who you are than an Olympic medal or even just an Olympic, having raced at an Olympics. And he kind of shook that out of me and got me to a place where I was ready to just race for me and be the best that I could be and use, kind of celebrate all the hard work I'd been doing over the months. And in coming back and getting me to race and to win a medal at the Duathlon World Championships, it kind of got me back on track and led to what came next. So I'm very grateful for that and very grateful for him being hard on me. So I'm sorry for messing that up. Hopefully everyone is it clear now, the whole story that I kind of got.
That timeline's beautiful. It's not a problem, Siri. And talking chronologically, I mean, you know, and obviously we're leaving a lot of detail out here. There's so much I'd like to cover with you, Siri, and as always in life, so little time. But chronologically, you then in 2003 or thereabouts start to coach athletes yourself. And I mean, the successes, as I said at the top of the show, could fill pages, everything from, 3 times championships, the World Ironman champs with Miranda Carfrae, Leander Cave. Then there's, Olympic medalists that you've coached, age group success. The list just goes on and on and on. It's one of the most prolific honour boards for a coach in the sport of triathlon. So, Siri, that all started in 2003. I'm curious, as a coach, what are your 3 top attributes that you like to see in an athlete to take them on as someone that you want to work with?
I love answering questions like this because I know in the beginning I didn't really have a choice and I just wanted a team, and now it's such an incredible gift to be able to really create a culture And so the type of athletes that are kind of attracted to me and that I want to bring on board all have these characteristics. And I would say that one is relentlessness, just resilience, being able to understand that it's not always going to be roses. We grow the most through our struggles. We're either winning or we're learning, not failing. Being able to accept that, this is a process and this is a journey. And all of my athletes truly embrace, the good, the bad, the ugly, the pretty, knowing that they're growing through all of it. And as long as we grow, we're making progress. And when we're making progress, not only are we succeeding, but we're happy. So that's crucial, is just that relentlessness and that resilience and being able to accept failure as learning rather than, oh, it's all over and I need to go find another coach because I had a bad race, which happens all the time. The second thing I would say is appreciation and gratitude. Really appreciating the fact, how just appreciating the little things, the fact that they've got 2 arms, 2 legs, a beating heart, and the desire and the will to get out there and train hard every day and to, take part in this tremendous sport, and the appreciation for their training partners and for all the hard work that everyone around them is doing, the hard work that I'm doing. But just that sense of gratitude. And one thing that's so powerful about gratitude is that it's literally impossible to feel anger or fear when you're in a state of gratitude. So if you think about a whole group of people training hard and going after their dreams, and they generally live from that place of appreciation and gratitude, there's not a lot of anger, there's not a lot of expressions of negative things, and it's not put on, it's not faked, it's real. This is just kind of people that they are. And then the third thing I think is ownership. I don't know if there's a great word for that, but being, what is your why behind taking on this sport? What is your why behind wanting to be a part of my squad? And does that why just include you, or do you also want to help others be the best that they can be? Do you want to contribute beyond yourself? Do you want to continue to grow, or do you feel that you are just perfect the way that you are, and we're lucky to have you in the group? And that ownership also comes down to, as an example, when I failed to qualify for the Olympics, I remember I had every opportunity to come up with an excuse. People were like, did you have a flat tire? Are you sick? Do you have, is it that time of the month? And I just said, no, I choked. I completely choked. I gave up. Mentally, I got way too emotional and I just had no power, and I choked. And there's a real power to owning the truth of every situation. And sometimes that's going to be a hard truth that you don't even want to tell yourself. But there's an incredible power in that honesty. So I guess honesty or ownership, they kind of lie together in one. But I think that's a crucial aspect of when I have an athlete that I know is going to own their behaviors and own their truth and own everything about their lives. I know that they're going to be honest, and we're going to be able to really work with our losses and when things go wrong, because we're going to understand what happened. I'm going to take ownership if I made a mistake as the coach. They'll take ownership if they gave up halfway through the race. And it gives you a tremendous platform to work from. And it also really tells me that, if this person wants it bad enough and they can be honest with themselves, then we can make incredible things happen. There's no doubt. And not only can we make them happen once, but we can be continually successful. So hopefully that helps, but those are really important to me. And when you have all those three, it leads to a really empowering and positive environment where everyone is super inspired and always growing and always wanting to not only be the best that they can be, but bring out the best in others, understanding that the other people are also bringing out the best in them. So it's an incredibly a powerful environment, and it's really wonderful that I can actually create that environment by, who I take on. And at this point, it's really, it's incredible how the people that do want to either be a part of our Team Serious Tri Club or be coached by myself or Beck or any of my other coaches, they just fit that mold right off the bat. So there must be something that kind of speaks that.
Well, I think it's as you just have articulated so well, Siri. I mean, from an outsider looking in at the success of your club, your squad, your cohort of athletes, the fact that you can articulate it so easily, it's obviously a magnet for people that self-select that that's them or that's not. And there's more to coaching successfully than a prettily written program.
Right.
Obviously, as you say, it's that next layer, and so I think that's a terrific insight. And Siri, I mean, of all the coaching success that you've experienced and all that will come, is there one story of transformation a little bit like yours that, just really is quite fond to you? Like, going from the bobbing up and down swimmer to a world championship. Is there any, stories you've had a part to play in that, mirror that?
I've been lucky enough to play a role in a lot of them, and they just absolutely, make my heart sing, as cheesy as that sounds. But I would say probably with that lead-in, Leanda Cave in 2012. I remember, Rinny had left the year before. And now we look back at that, and it was one of the greatest things ever because, she realized, what a great team we made and ended up coming back, and we ended up winning a couple more championships since then. So it all worked out for the best. But I remember, Rinny left and wanted to see if she could learn more elsewhere. And that was hard. That's really hard. We'd been working together for like 6.5 years or something like that. And I remember I had Leanda Cave, who I'd known for a long time, and she was just a tremendous athlete, and all she wanted was to win Kona. And she came to me and said, I know I've won a short course world championship, but I want this more than anything in the world. And I was so hurt from Rinny leaving, and I remember feeling when Leanda said Kona is all I care about, I thought, oh my God, okay, awesome. Like, let's literally put everything we have into making this happen. And I remember I called, other people, other coaches, and said, hey, Leanda wants me to coach her, and, what do you think about, I just would kind of bring it up, and they'd be like, oh, she's old, she's done, her career's over, and everybody had given up on her. And I thought to myself, I just see so much passion and fire in this girl, and I just loved her. I still do. I mean, she's just an amazing woman. And I remember thinking, you know what? They're all wrong. And, she's coming here. She believes in me 1,000,000%. I believe in her 1,000,000%. We're going to do everything we can to make this happen. And I remember going off to 70.3 Worlds and saying, okay, we're all about Kona this year. So this race is just kind of get out there, get a great training day. We'll see what we still need to work on. It'll be a great indicator for us. And she went out and won that. And both of us, we were our minds were just blown, and we were so excited. And we went off to Kona, and, we had planned for every single scenario that could happen in Kona, and there's a lot, obviously, and we tried to prepare for everything. And I'll never forget, she was at about, I think, 18 miles on the run just before going into the energy lab, and Rinny caught her, and it was literally right where I was standing. And I was like, oh my God, why does this have to be happening right in front of me? Like, this athlete that I have, coached for 6.5 years, who I absolutely adore, but I'm hurting because she left me. And then my new athlete that I believe with all my heart can win this race. And I looked at Leanda and I said, you know what to do. And I went into the energy lab, and I just was freaking out because we can't go in the energy lab. So, and everybody, I was listening to the broadcast, and they're like, forget it. Anytime Rinny catches, somebody, it's done, they're over. So now let's just wait and see, Rinny catch Rachel. And I was just like, oh, okay, but I still believe that, Leanne is going to have this amazing race and she's going to finish strong and she'll get on the podium. And I'm standing there and suddenly I'm looking to see the two figures because they were running together for a little while. And I see one figure running up out of the energy lab, and it's this tall, lanky figure. And I'm like, okay, unless Rinny's like, grown a few inches, that's Leanda. And there's no Rinny there. And I'm like freaking out. And Leanda comes by me. And I knew she was feeling amazing because she had her fuel belt. And there's still like 10K to go from that point. And she threw her fuel belt over to the side of the road. And she just looked at me and I was like, excuse my language, but holy shoot, like this is going to happen. And she ended up catching Rachel and won the Ironman World Championship. And it was the most incredible moment because I think two things were very powerful. And one is that I felt that in Rinny leaving me, Rinny had really kind of defined my career up until that point. And because I had a lot of success with a lot of athletes, but we'd achieved the most. And of course, being someone that is already, at that time insecure and didn't have a lot of confidence, I was like, everyone's going to think, Siri's no longer lucky enough to have a great athlete. So, they'd kind of given up on me. And in the same note, I think a lot of people had given up on Leanda. So here we were, and I think both of us, we've never talked about it, but would probably say the same thing, that here we were feeling like people had given up on us, yet we went out and believed in each other and did everything in our power to just prepare her to the best of her ability, and she ended up winning the whole thing. And 2 championships in that year, and it just makes it the most powerful and just the most fulfilling when it comes to when you ask, some like one of those kind of stories of being the underdog and coming out on top. That definitely wins the award for that. But obviously, my wins with Rinny, and especially when she came back after having left, and I don't think anything can beat those because it's a long relationship of 11 and a half years now, and we both know what we both put into it. So that for sure kind of is the ultimate memory for me because it's kind of been a history for us.
Yeah, certainly. And I mean, so much there, Siri. I mean, I often think one of the toughest things that I feel for coaches around is not when their athlete underperforms, because that's bound to happen, and that's part of the development of just the person and the athlete. The lessons from that. It's more when an athlete chooses, as you mentioned there, when say Miranda first moved out of your stable of athletes. It happens in life, and it happens, in any endeavor, any field. But how does you, as a coach that puts your heart and soul into people that you coach, how do you process the disappointment of when, which happens to anyone, no matter how good you are, no matter what the honor roll says? How do you process that disappointment in an athlete if an athlete says, Siri, all right, time to make a change?
Well, this is the most important thing that you have to remember, and I'm so glad that I had the ability to find this place, is that you need to remember, if you truly gave your heart and soul and gave this athlete, everything that you had, focus on the fact that that time was your time with them, and you accomplished what you set out to accomplish with that athlete. You achieved those things, and you can feel proud of that. They came to you to get something, you delivered, and now it's time for them to move on to another learning experience. And that, like you're saying, happens in every area of life. So realizing that, first of all, that to really give yourself the credit for what you did accomplish with that athlete, and even if things went sour or went downhill after that, just focus on the fact that, okay, maybe this lasted longer than it should have, but the initial thing that they came to me for, we achieved. And, give yourself credit for that. And then the hardest part for me was not letting my mind convince me that, all of the success you had with her was all because of her, not because of you. Like, I could have fallen for all of that crap that my mind was trying to torture me with. But go back to the truth and say, this is who I am. I'm a coach, and I give my heart and soul, and I know what I'm doing. I've had these results, and it's just a time for them. They need to find something else somewhere else. And I've done my job, and I'm proud of the work that we've done. And to literally take the high road and say, hey, we accomplished a lot together. That was awesome. I wish you all the very best. And you do, because as coaches, deep down, and I know that this is true with every coach, you're not a coach unless you really care about helping someone reach a whole new level, whether it's in the sport or in their lives. And when you remember that your why do you do this, then just be happy that you taught them something, they achieved something that they came to you for. They are now a more confident person, a stronger person, whatever. And now your job is done, and feel proud of that. And now hope that they can continue to learn more and to grow more. And you'll always know that you were a part of the person that they will ultimately become, and to feel proud of that. It's so important to remember your why and to just want the best for everyone that comes your way, whether they stay or they go. They're a part of your history now, and you want to give them everything you have, and then hope that they continue to thrive no matter where they choose to go.
Yeah, and that's great perspective, isn't it? Holding them lightly but dearly at the same time. Siri, there is so much, and I'm going to want to invite you back for a second round of Siri Lindley on the Physical Performance Show to cover some more really practical parts of performance. But in sort of bringing our time into a close today, Siri, if you could boil down all your learnings, both as an athlete that reached the heights of your sport and also as a coach that's reached the heights of the coaching world, to one bit of advice to help listeners of this program perform at their physical best, Siri, what would it be?
I would say, to keep it just super simple, is just always give your absolute best. Do your absolute best. And that means with whatever you have in that moment, do your absolute best. Because if we are afraid of giving too much or going too hard or doing this or doing that, we're holding ourselves back from what we're truly capable of. And if you just go out and that every race you did, every training session you did, every relationship you had, every job you took on, you did the absolute best that you could in as many moments as possible, then your inner judge that comes out and wants to tell you how much you suck and how you can't do this, it can't come out, because you've done your best. And there's nothing you can say to punish yourself or torture yourself if you've done your best, because we can all only do our best. So that's something that when I remember that, even if I wasn't fast enough yet, or I wasn't swimming well yet, if I did my best, I was going to constantly improve and get better and make steps forward. And if you're doing your best in your relationships, then that's going to add that balance that you need to train well and perform well. So do the best that you can in your life, and everything will work out great. And when I say do your best, it doesn't mean hitting your personal best times every day. I mean just giving your best effort, and with the right attitude and with a sense of gratitude, then I think everything will work out great. And don't take yourself too seriously. And all the numbers, I mean, I know people are going to hate me for saying this, but numbers are so useful and all of that, but it brings out the inner critic in us for every second of every workout. If you're following your watch and your power meter every second of every session, the judge is there judging whether it's good enough or not good enough, or, slow or fast or hard or easy, or good enough to win or not good enough. And I would say free yourself as often as you can to just enjoy the sport and be the best that you can be, and go by feel. And I think your experience of the sport will not only be that much more fun, but you'll find that your performance is enhanced as well, because there's less negative critiques coming throughout every session and every race.
Yeah, great advice, Siri. And Siri, we like to have the guests of the program issue listeners with a physical challenge for the week. So this can be anything. It can be very entry level, or it can be difficult and demanding. What's Siri Lindley's physical challenge for the week that this show airs in going to be to listeners?
Okay, my physical challenge is that every time you are doing something that seems so hard and you're wondering whether or not you can do it, as you're doing it, no matter how well whether you're hitting the mark you're trying to hit or you're not hitting it, turn it around in a way that empowers you rather than disempowers you. For instance, like if I'm out running and I'm, on this big hilly trail, but I'm going so slow that I'm barely moving and my wife drops me, instead of focusing on how awful I feel because I'm dropped and I'm slow, it's turning it around and saying, okay, well, I'm out here, I'm on this gorgeous trail, I'm just going to be strong, I'm going to get up this hill, I'm going to try and keep my, just keep composure and good technique. So finding a way, I guess, to stay empowered even in the toughest moments when you're really suffering and wanting to give up.
Yeah, brilliant. So listeners, that is a great challenge and one that can benefit us all. So Siri, I wanted to thank you. Your time is in demand, and to take the time with us today is a real treat. So thank you. And for listeners that want to find out about more about yourself, about your great book Surfacing, about Team Sirius, your triathlon camps, where can we find you? Where can we follow the journey?
You can check us out at SiriLindley.com. And also we've got this incredible Team Sirius Tri Club. It's $9.99 a month. And every week, Beck and I are doing live chats for an hour where we answer endless questions. And literally, it's a no-brainer, $9.99 a month. And every week, you get to be a part of live training sessions with my pros and with me and asking any questions you have. So join that now. It's an incredible opportunity. And most of the proceeds go to Beck, and I have just formed our Believe Ranch and Rescue, which is rescuing dogs from euthanasia and horses from feedlots. So we're saving dogs and horses from really dire circumstances. So most of the proceeds from our club go to that. So I would love to not only help all of you reach your goals in the sport for a very small price each month, but in the same note, you'll be saving a lot of beautiful souls. So that would make me happy. So it's Siri-Lindley.com. We'd love to have you on the team. And you don't have to be in America. It's just it's a great opportunity to be a part of our culture here. So
well, Siri,
thank you, Brad.
Tag that up in the show notes, and I'll personally, just as an appreciation for your sharings today, Siri, I'll become a Team Sirius member and look forward to jumping in. So I'll be doing that in the next day or two. So hope you can welcome me in.
Brad. Thank you, Brad. Wow, I can't believe we'll have the great Brad Beer on our team. That's awesome.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it. Siri, just finally here, Drummers Shannon's just sending a message on social media to say, woohoo, one of my favourite athletes, so excited to hear what Siri has to say. So that's from Shannon. So thanks for sharing today, Siri, and all the best for the rest of the year ahead, which I know is action packed with all the the major races coming up, and all the very best.
Oh, thank you so much, Brad, and I so enjoyed talking to you, and you keep up all the amazing stuff you're doing as well.
So, there you have it. I trust you enjoyed this episode of the Physical Performance Show featuring Siri Lindley. If you did, please let us know. Tag Siri and I in on social media and let us know one takeaway that you took from the show, the episode. Likewise, if you've taken on the physical challenge, be sure to let us know. Massive thank you to the good folk who make this podcast possible each week, Mr. Daryl Misson, audio engineer, and Susan Wilkin, show's VA. Thank you, guys. If you listeners would like to subscribe to the show, to the podcast, be sure to hit subscribe from within your app, and you'll get that populated into your app each and every week. If you've enjoyed the episode and you'd like to tag a friend on social, that would be wonderful. If you particularly know someone into the sport of triathlon, or a coach for that matter, please tag them up. That'd be wonderful. Lastly, if you're into running, you can now pick up your copy of my Amazon running and jogging bestseller, You Can Run Pain-Free. It's available on Audible and also iBooks, and of course available through Kindle and paperback versions on Amazon internationally, or POGO Physio online domestically in Australia. A copy of the show notes can be found over at pogophysio.com.au with all the links referred to in today's episode. Coming up in next week's episode of the Physical Performance Show, I catch up with Sinead Diver. Sinead is a matter of only days away from her Australian representative debut, representing Australia in the IAAF World Athletics Championships in London in the marathon. And Sinead's story is quite remarkable. She only started running seriously 5 to 6 years ago. And in qualifying for the World Championships this year, 2017, Sinead posted the 11th fastest marathon ever by a female runner in Australia, 2:31:37 at the Nagoya Marathon. Sinead's an incredibly busy lady. She works, she's also a mum, and alongside that, she manages to get in training at an elite level. So if you're into performance, if you're into running, if you're into marathon running, be sure to tune in next week for episode 68 of the Physical Performance Show. And until then, as always, keep pursuing your physical best performance. I'm Brad Beer, and this has been the Physical Performance Show.